Hello everyone, my name's Ian, the part-time Dungeon Master. Welcome back to D20 Sundays. Oh boy. Whew. Where do I begin? You know, I have a number of groups that I run, that I play with. I really enjoy playing with them. But every now and then, one of the groups will surprise me at the level of idiocy that they'll go to. So the group I'm talking about today has a history of essentially pranking each other. They like pranking each other. You know, most of the time it's harmless things. Most of the time it's just, to inconvenience or get in the way of each other. But normally they never do it when they know it's like, this isn't going to actually hurt the other person. Most of the time. But this group. So, I guess I'll start kind of towards the beginning of the session. They were tasked with infiltration of a city to weaken it from the inside for their allies to come in and take over the city. The country is in the middle of a civil war, so they're needing to essentially take over city by city from the enemy forces, essentially the opposing faction, while being branded as rebels. And, yeah. So they're helping the true king, fighting against the usurper king, rebelling, and all that jazz. So here's their plan once they get in. Essentially, they had a contact that got them in. The contact got them in, and then, it was up to them from now. They were warned, no open combat, and that they have to hide their weapons and armor because, it will be taken from them if the guards see them. So that's what they do. They hide their gear in a bag of holding that I gave to them, and they proceed on with their plan to essentially how they're going to, in a week's time, disrupt the city enough and weaken the guards enough for the main forces to come in and take over the city. Whew. So, step one of their glorious plan. They reopened the church. The church, Father Alaron, had been detained, and fate is unknown, because it was believed he was accused of helping suspected rebels. So, yeah. While they did that, the Dragonborn of the group went on and did his best to find the rebels, or people who might be sympathizers for, having their lives ruined by the usurper king's forces. So, that's all great. The cleric, he goes and essentially tries to inspect the wall as best as he can to try and find weak points, which is a great plan. The only problem is he was noticed, so the guards kind of shoot him away constantly. And one of the people warned him, was like, you don't want to be noticed getting too close to the wall because they will open fire on you. Mind you, in this town, or in the city, humans are second class. If you're not a high elf, you're second class. And if you're a particular race, you're even worse than second class. But that's not important. What is important is, they each had kind of sound ideas. They were going to use the church. Well, let me rephrase this. Two of them had a sound idea of, we're going to use the church as, our point of barracks, kind of their holdout, their hideout. The rogue, the Dragonborn, said he's going to try and find the rebels, or people who might sympathize with them, and essentially use one of the abandoned houses as their hideout. They did not communicate this with each other. They just simply declared that they're going to go do this, and figured everyone else would catch on. So the Changeling and the Paladin, who's Nazamar, essentially get the doors of the church back open. They start cleaning it up. The guards ask him, what's going on? And, he tells them, we're going to be having a sermon tomorrow. Bright and early. We're going to bring religion back here because, that's what this place needs. Mind you, the church has been sacked of everything valuable by the guards and the usurper king forces because, they're in the middle of a civil war and nothing is sacred. So with that, they're like, okay, fine, whatever, the changeling turned into a high elf, and, it's pretty much saying, he's doing it at my bequest and all that jazz. So the guards are like, okay, whatever, just don't cause too much of trouble. Um, and so the Dragonborn, the rogue, goes and does eventually find this place that he believes that might have some of the sympathizers. More pointedly, the people with bounties on their heads, because he wants to try and get them onto their side. And he does. He finds them. One of them grabs him, holds him hostage for a moment. But they do, it's like, okay, you're obviously not with the occupying forces. No one tells anyone that they're with the true king. So they don't tell hey, the rebels are coming to liberate the city. No, he's like, I've got friends who can help us, get rid of these people. And, they're like, okay, cool, we're fine with that. Here comes the next part of their brilliant plan. They meet up with the newest player of the group, who is essentially a guard amongst all the high elves. He's a half elf. There's a few other half elves, but essentially they're considered low class footsmen. They're not allowed to hold any rank whatsoever. They're treated like shit, and he wants revenge so badly upon his superiors, but he just can't get it. So what he does, he often steals supplies and funnels it to people who need it without his uppers finding out. But they're able to essentially convince him that betraying of his superiors will make things better by that they are essentially going to have enough people to overthrow them and kick them out. So he tells them what he knows as far as the schedules, as far as his superiors. He knows that the captain never leaves the garrison, that the lieutenant visits the brothel, and that he's never met the quartermaster, but he does know that the captain does regularly go visit him. So when they hear the word brothel, their bright plan is not to ambush the lieutenant as he's going to the brothel, ambush the lieutenant when he's coming out of the brothel, ambush him at the brothel by hiding amongst the rooms and paying off the matron and all the whores to essentially hide them, so that way they can ambush him when he's weaponless and without armor. No, their plan is to take the changeling, make him into a woman, and then whore him out to the lieutenant, and then ambush him in the middle of the deed. That's their plan. And I'm sitting there just thinking, oh my god, these idiots. These fucking idiots. 13 different ways I had planned for them to be able to take out the lieutenant, because they don't want to fight the lieutenant and the captain at the same time. The one guard, told them, you do not want to fight them at the same time. Their teamwork is impeccable. They have support magic that helps the two of them fight even harder. So, there's that. And they're like, okay, cool. This is how we're going to take out the lieutenant. We'll figure out for the other ones as soon as we can. Their next part of the plan was essentially to break into the armories and then arm the populace to cause an uprising. To arm the populace. Well, this is good to an extent. Here's the problem. The populace knows that the guards will shoot upon them. They had in the past. They were actually terrified of the guards. They're terrified of the usurper king's forces occupying the city because they're terrible. They're evil in a very good broad term. So you're going to arm these people who are terrified with weapons and tell them, hey, we want you, who is unskilled with using this weapon, who is unskilled at wearing this armor, who is unskilled at combat, to help us fight against all of these guards. We just need to hold them out long enough for our forces to get here. Again, taking forever to tell anybody that they're with the true king. Literally, they waited to the last minute of this session to actually tell one person that they're with the true king. These idiots. I'd like to point out this is the same group that did Manor de la Rosia, a previous video I did where it was a one-shot. And they're a little bit better at teamwork this time. They're better at working with each other and coming up with ideas together. It's just sometimes at the expense of one of the other players. As such, this was something that, none of the players would have known, not even the guard, because it's not really handled by his department. He's just, patrol and, make sure trouble's not caused. But essentially there is a census, as the city's been on lockdown for weeks. Everyone's miserable about it, and, food is getting kind of scarce in some parts. But there's been a lockdown, and as such, no one in, no one out. And there's been a census that's been taken as to how many people are in there, how much of each race, and so on. And there is no Dragonborn. The turtle that they had on the list went missing recently, but the players know where he is. But the Dragonborn, they never had one on the census before, so when the higher-ups heard that there was a Dragonborn in town from one of the passing patrols, because, let's face it, they're terrible at their job at sneaking around and like being out in the open, apparently. But the guards, reported like, yeah, there was a Dragonborn. And then the higher-ups is like, find them and bring them to me. Or kill them. Because there is not supposed to be a Dragonborn in here. There is none on the census. Which means he broke in somehow. So, when the players found out, they're like, oh god, we gotta hide him. So what do? They split the party. So the one guard, the newest player, and the changeling disguised as a whore go to the brothel, where the guard kind of like shows her off a little bit, makes her do a twirl, and make sure she smells super nice, and it's like, offers her services and all that jazz to, so that way the next time the lieutenant comes by, this will be the girl that he uses. And then fails his persuasion check as far as saying, she's very skilled. Fade to black embarrassment. But yeah, so those two are doing that. The other idiots. Well, let me rephrase that. The cleric actually was being rather smart. Very, making sure he's able to be helpful, but at the same time he couldn't do a lot. Because it's just the way his character was built. But he was essentially like making sure, like, if anyone came to the church, there would always be someone there who could give healing to where they could also get a little bit of extra money. So, he's doing that. The Dragonborn gets into the bag of holding, because I said, yeah, you can fit in there. There's about 10 minutes of oxygen in there. And the players are like, cool, we'll hide the Dragonborn and, open it up, let his head out every now and then for some air. And then, just keep moving and all that jazz. So that way you can sneak him around town. The Paladin, he, carries the Dragonborn. Well, while the Dragonborn is in the bag of holding with everyone else's gear, including the Changeling's tools, because the Changeling is, at this point, an artificer, he pretty much builds weapons and has a tinker set, and his hammer in particular has been touched by his patron, because he's a Hexblade warlock. The Dragonborn decides to mess with it. He says that he wants to tie all of the tools together with all of his gear, so that way if he tries to pull out one of them, it pulls out everything. And, will, in such a way that it will cause damage to the warlock when he pulls, or the changeling when he pulls it out. So he touched the hammer first with the rope. And I was like, oh, there's something I have to roll for a moment. Because of what was going on with the changeling at the moment, plus some foreign person, or essentially a foreign hand touching the hammer that is super special. And mind you, the Dragonborn and the Paladin both knew that the magic was the hammer was magical, because the warlock told them that it was magical and that his deity or his patron did something to it, but he doesn't quite know what yet. So I roll, and I was like, okay, let's see, on the charts that I have, oh, well, so the hammer goes flying out of the bag of holding, followed by rope, Dragonborn, all the way into the sky. They go flying. By the time the Dragonborn says, I let go of the rope, he realized that he is 80 feet up into the air, at an angle. So he's traveling a distance, because the hammer was going back to the changeling, essentially returning to its owner. So he lets go, and he's like, I aim to try and like dive into the river that goes between the separates the city. It's like, cool, roll in acrobatics. Fails. Badly fails. He got like a 4. So he fails. I'm like, oh no. So I roll a percentile to see around where he lands. And I told him, if he hits the junkyard on one side of the river, it's going to be so much worse. But he doesn't hit the junkyard. He goes through someone's house instead. He takes... I can't remember exact amount of damage, but it brought him down to -2 by the time he stopped falling. And the paladin, pulled his cloak over himself so that no one would see his radiant wings as he activates his radiant soul, because he's an Asmar, and flies after him. Realizing he's not going to be able to catch him, but he might be able to, do something. Meanwhile, the cleric is, running after him on foot. And it's like, oh god, oh god, oh god. But because I'm a nice dungeon master, I allow them to get to him in time and essentially stabilize him. They stuff him back into the bag of holding, and the cleric as well into the bag of holding, so they have 5 minutes of air, while the paladin brings them over to the junkyard, pays off the junk owner to, let them hide for a moment. And the junk owner's like, okay, I didn't see anything. But yeah, this group. They're like, oh, I think we broke in. No, you didn't break me. I was laughing. I won't lie. I was laughing. But in retrospect, my God. Terrible decisions, one after another. Of the many possibilities that they could have done, or dedicated to, as far as how to take out the lieutenant, whoring out one of the players was not on the list of things that I thought they would do. Purely because it's that's in bad taste, but then again, I guess these people have no shame or something. I know one of them doesn't, that's the Dragonborn. He has no shame. And I don't mean that just as his character, but the person as well. He has no shame. He even admits it. But yeah. So, that was the last session I had with them. That was Wednesday. Can't wait to go back and for them to realize that they screwed up. And I know they're watching. I know at least one of them is watching. And I want to say, when Rack the Goblin was there in the church with you guys, you could have had him dug holes to anywhere in the city. Because I'm a goblin that digs holes. That's what I do. I dig holes. If you wanted me to dig a hole, say, into one of the armories, or into a perfect ambush spot, or into the garrison to get people in, or maybe secret ways for enemy forces to sneak into the city, well, I guess you should have paid me and told me that's what you wanted me to do when I was standing right there eating a piece of beef jerky. But they didn't. And they lost that opportunity. I'll catch you guys next time. Laters.